One of the biggest fears swirling around the Iran payday is the fear of funding terror. The U.S. State Department lists Iran as a top state sponsor of terrorism. Last year, Secretary of State John Kerry insisted any money sent to Iran would not be used to fund terror.
As you know, there's concern that Iran will take some of that money that they're going to get from the frozen assets that are now being unfrozen, that they'll use it on to create mischief, more mischief in the area, give it some of it to Hezbollah, some of it to the Shiite militias in Yemen, and so forth. Right. What is the U.S. prepared to do about that? How do you see that playing out?
We're going to clamp down. They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do that outside even of this agreement. There is a UN resolution that specifically applies to them not being allowed to transfer to Hezbollah.
And today from the Pentagon, the president said this.
Can you assure the American people that none of that money went to support terrorism?
Okay. It's been interesting to watch this story surface. Some of you may recall, we announced these payments in January. You'll recall that there were all these horror stories about how Iran was going to cheat and this wasn't going to work and Iran was going to get $150 billion to finance terrorism and all these kinds of scenarios. And none of them have come to pass.
Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador John Bolton, goes on the record. The president quite arrogant and confident of himself tonight on this money.
Well, he simply doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, the notion that we had any control over what Iran is going to do with the unfrozen assets or the payment in exchange for the hostages is flatly wrong. But even worse, the question is irrelevant. All dollars are equally green. Money is fungible. Whatever they get from the unfrozen assets, they could spend it on roads and highways, just frees up their transportation budget to give to Hezbollah.
What I don't like, among a lot of things, about how this went down is that President Obama insists this was not a ransom, that it was a coincidence. And listen to what Pastor Abedini, who was one of the released hostages, had to say.
They told us we were going to be there for 20 minutes, but it took like hours and hours. We slept at the airport, and when I asked them why you don't let us go, because the plane was there, pilot was there, everyone was ready that we leave the country, they said we are waiting for another plane, and until that plane doesn't come, we never let you go.
So he says they said we are waiting for another plane. That's the cash. And if this is if this release of the hostages, including Abedini, is unrelated to some sort of ransom deal, why'd they have to wait for the plane full of cash?
Well, exactly. Look, the spokesman for the State Department said yesterday, who are you going to believe, us or some Iranian? And the answer is, I believe some Iranian, because they are describing what actually happened in reality.
Well, he's not just some Iranian. He's an American Christian pastor.
No, but he was told this by Iranian officials because they understood exactly what the deal was.
Well, that would be a coincidence that he's told about this plane. That would be a really weird coincidence.
No, and the whole thing is tied to the nuclear agreement. January the 16th is the key day, and that was established as what they call implementation day by the Vienna Agreement signed the previous July. Purely coincidence that the hostages are announced to be released on January the 16th and the plane carrying the cash heads off to Tehran. Purely by coincidence. I mean, really, you have to suspend disbelief to even consider that a coincidence.
Well, I'm certainly glad they're home. I know you are. I know everybody else is. But I really don't like the fact that I feel that we've been had when they say that it wasn't a ransom. It was a ransom.
We've been had over and over again in this deal, and this is not the end of it.